It's Sunday, July 28th, 2019. Welcome to your All About Joe Benjamin's weekly mixtape and weekend review. Got a number of headlines today I want to go through. Luckily, each one of them can get through pretty quickly, so this shouldn't take too long. But let's get to the headlines that may or may not be impacting your financial plan and portfolio. And we're going to start off with some economic data, both U.S. and international, as we work our way through. But the second quarter GDP, so the gross domestic product, which is the metric of the growth in the U.S., slowed but was still up 2.1%. So we were still growing at a good rate, but the rate slowed down, but overall was a good number. Two takeaways from this I thought we would point out. First, business investment in the second quarter was down, so businesses were spending less money investing back into the business. You've got to believe this has to be tied to the trade war between the U.S. and China and the unknown that might come with that. So we're starting to see that trickle into business. But on the flip side, consumer spending was up and it was strong, so that kind of offset some of that business investment so we can still be moving forward. The positive of that is the consumer, at least from this metric, still feels optimistic about their current situation in the future. Otherwise, psychology would say if we're nervous about the future, we might start hoarding more cash and not spending as much, but the consumer spent, which is a good sign, and moving things forward. So remember, we've talked about the Federal Reserve a lot over the last year. They're going to be having a meeting this week about interest rates. They're looking at all these metrics about growth and inflation and all these things to see what's going on to make their decision. So that's why this is kind of a big thing. Plus, we just want to see that our economy is still growing despite some of the doom and gloom headlines that are out there from time to time. Nonetheless, second quarter, 2.1% growth on the GDP. Again, that's gross domestic product. Can't talk today, but that is the U.S. headline. I have a couple international headlines. Being a believer in a globally diversified portfolio, I think it is important to have an idea of what's going on, understanding what's going on across the globe, because as I talked about this week in the rundown, which if you're not subscribed to that on your Amazon device, go to Amazon, search RLS Wealth Management Rundown and subscribe. I do a daily rundown talking about headlines similar to this week in review, but just a very quick brief every day. But we talked about diversification one day this week and how that always means one area of your portfolio is not going to be performing as well as others, but it's important to be diversified. And if we understand why that area may not be doing as well as the others, it makes it a little bit easier to stick to the investment plan because there's reason behind why it's performing that way, and we know it needs to be in there for the overall long-term plan. So internationally, the ECB signaled that it's going to be cutting interest rates and potentially starting back another bond buyback program. So that's the European basically version of the Federal Reserve. So they're going to be cutting interest rates and they're going to be buying back bonds potentially to help stimulate some growth over there. Just good to know because, again, internationally we have exposure there to have to know what's going on. We've talked about the growth concerns globally and in Europe for a while now. It seems like every year for about 5 or 6 years coming out of the great financial crisis in 2008-2009, I was hearing a lot of, well, Europe is just a year or two behind the U.S. Europe has really not yet found that recovery that we've had coming out of the Great Recession. So it's always been a lot going on over there, from Greece to Brexit to other things going on in Italy. So nonetheless, they're going to be probably cutting rates, much like we are going to be doing this month as well. But the economic data coming from Europe versus the U.S. is a little different. So just be on the lookout for those headlines. We've talked about our Fed. ECB is going to be cutting rates as well, so it looks like it's kind of a global effort to take care of inflation, keep an eye on that, and also try to stimulate growth in the economies. The second Europe area topic, Boris Johnson, I had to check because I always want to say Boris Yeltsin, showing my age. Boris Johnson will become the next UK Prime Minister, and that is important because I mentioned just a moment ago Brexit, and he still plans to move forward with the Brexit decision, removing from the moving the UK out of the Eurozone. So we will see if that actually happens. If you remember when Brexit was voted on and when it went down, it was a very, I won't say traumatic, but it was a very impactful short-term move in the market. Since then, it's kind of become a headline that pops up from here and there, but nothing's really happened to move forward. If we get closer to seeing Brexit actually happening, I think you'll see some more headlines. The markets may react. May not be a positive experience in the short term, but then we'll see what happens. So expect to hear more about Brexit in the near future, especially as the party power changes hands to Boris Johnson. So that's good to know as well. Coming back to the U.S., the Justice Department is about to open a new antitrust review of big tech companies. So again, back to the rundown. We talked about this week about how and honestly on the weekend review. So we talked about this on the weekend review as well. Tech companies have been leading the markets, and how that's not 2000 comparison, but it just is what it is. It's where technology is. It's leading so many different departments. But if you have the government coming after some of the biggest names, we've got Facebook, Google, Amazon, Apple. If they are looking into them, looking into antitrust, seeing if they are preventing competition from happening, that could lead to headlines that would concern those stocks, which would then spill into the markets, because these are big parts of the indexes. They're big parts of the funds that we all hold. So do you need to be making changes? Probably not. Not here to make investment advice on this week in review, but just know that there may be some headlines coming out over the coming weeks about antitrust and competition and some of the biggest names that we know out there, and that could make some moves in the market in the short term. Again, I don't know if that's something you need to be making a reaction to. Talk to your financial advisor to see how that impacts your portfolio, but just know that that's going to be going on. The Equifax settlement, $700 million. I had to check because the spell check on my word processor changed it from Equifax to equivalent. So I had to think for a second of what was the company. The settlement is $700 million. If you were impacted by it, you were eligible to a $125 reward, if you want to call it a reward, or more, depending on if you can prove the amount of time spent fixing all of your headaches from this. The $125, just sign up, see if you're eligible, and you're able to get it. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is the $125 is not guaranteed, because depending on the number of people that apply for it, it's only $700 million. If more people apply for it that would exceed that, then it's going to reduce the amount you might get, so you may end up getting less. We'll leave the talk about is $700 million enough of a punishment. I don't think it is, for another day. But if you were impacted, or you think you might have been impacted, check the CNBC article in the notes on All About Your Benjamins in the Weekend Review article section, and check that out. They've got the link to the website. You can go in and apply. You can check and see if you're eligible. You might as well do it to see if you can get some money from it. One of the requirements to get the $125 is to have credit monitoring in place. If you don't already have it, there are plenty of free resources out there that I have read on multiple sources that will meet the needs for that. So there's a couple of them listed in CNBC's article. Check those out, and definitely go through it if you were impacted by it. You might as well get something out of it since the award is there. And finally, not anything financial related, but it is a topic we've discussed before. I've had a good friend of mine, Blake Street, on the podcast before to talk about esports. If you have kids or grandkids, you probably know about Fortnite, which is a game that became real popular. Well, they're having the Fortnite World Cup in New York City with a $30 million purse. So it's not $30 million to the winner. So all the different, the prize pool is $30 million, but still $30 million up for grabs for playing a video game. I'm not quite ready to shift the boys from soccer and basketball to gaming, but this is a legitimate business with a lot of money behind it. You have athletic scholarships, you have professional e-sport athletes. This is, I think, an area that many people don't realize how serious and how much money is flowing to. So I just want to talk about it again and bring it up there just to educate you more about things that are out there. Blows my mind that they're selling out stadiums for video games and watching other people play video games. But I guess if you're a gamer, that's not much more different than me and the boys going down to see the Pacers play in downtown. So nonetheless, $30 million Fortnite World Cup is going on in New York City. Blows my mind. That's it for this week. I hope you have a great week. Be sure to subscribe to everything, the blog, the podcast, YouTube, everything there. And most importantly, the Amazon flash briefing skill on your Alexa devices. RLS Wealth Management's rundown. Go to Amazon, search for it, subscribe to it, and then when you ask for your daily news, it'll pop up. 3 to 4 minutes is what I'm going for, talking about a topic from the day before, or if there's nothing major in the news, talking about some financial planning, investment principles, and just kind of some thought-provoking stuff around your planning and your thoughts for your future. So I hope you have a great week. I will talk to you on the rundown, and I'll see you next weekend.